Okay, how many of you are familiar with the concept of trans spice? Anyone? Okay. Hey, I wasn't familiar with it either. I didn't know there was a trans spice thing going on. And not recently until I went to this cooking school. That's right. I went to this elaborate cooking school, and the head cook, chef, basically unpacked this concept to all the students in the class. I was just a bystander. Again, I had a friend in the class, so I thought, I'll check it out. I've never been to one of these kind of elitist cooking schools. I knew very little about the fine art of cooking, and of course, I could use a little bit of culture, I suppose. So, and a nuanced way of looking at things. So, Chef started unpacking this concept and started with kind of the history of spice and said, really, what defines spice? I mean, spice was labeled, created, spices were given titles by folks who generally wore these white vests, jackets. Okay, yeah. And you notice that they never wore multicolored vests or jackets. There were never black ones or brown or purple ones, but they were always white. Okay. And so that was a concern. All right. And then Chef said, well, let's look at something very simple. Let's look at the sugar and let's look at salt. They're essentially the same. I mean, they're both white. Now, of course, we can still use them even though they're white. Okay, so just there, because I know there's black pepper, but hey, that's a whole different conversation. Let's just stick with this. And Chef said, well, if you think about it, they're a little bit different in appearance. Usually salt is a little more coarser, the grains are bigger, sugar is a little more refined. And we've always been given this old-fashioned notion that sugar is sweet and it's more comforting, and that salt is more bold, in your face flavor. And really, those are just ideas created by chefs. I mean, they were just constructs of a flavor that were given to us. And it's time to look at it in a more evolved way. Okay, all right. And so what Chef did was had all the students prepare a bunch of different dishes. But what we did, this was really unique, is we substituted. We had trans sugar and trans salt. So where a recipe called for that old-fashioned sugar, we used trans sugar. And where it called for salt, well, we just used trans salt. Okay, so, first recipe that was up was a chocolate cake. All right, made with trans sugar. Now, as I was preparing this recipe, I was a little bit kind of worried, considering that I had to use about a cup of the old-fashioned sugar, but I was going to use now trans sugar. And I put a cup of trans sugar in my cake and baked that cake. First bite, I took, it wasn't what I was expecting, but I guess that's it. It's that nuanced way. And personally, for me, it just didn't feel or taste right. And I don't know if I could really convince a bunch of 6-year-olds to eat that cake, but I looked around, I talked to some of the other students, and they all kind of had this sour look on their face. But then the professor said, really, isn't it great? Isn't this what it was always meant to be? Isn't this a good redefinition of what a cake should be? And, they reluctantly said, yeah, okay, I guess so. And then the next thing we were making was chicken noodle soup with trans salt. All right, this is like, I think, haute cuisine, highbrow cuisine. So we started into that, we started making that, and I got to be honest with you, first bite, and it's probably because I'm just, very much a heathen, I'm uncultured, I'm uncouth, and all these things, I suppose, and I just didn't kind of get the nuance of the flavors and everything. It was a little different, yeah. And again, talking to some of my other fellow students in the class or the other people that were in there, they seem to kind of have a little different take on it as well. But again, Chef reminded us, part of being evolving, part of as a society growing fundamentally, and we needed to have a more refined, more nuanced flavor palette. and said, this is really good. It was a little different. So, hey, again, I don't know. I'm maybe one of those old-fashioned guys. I just kind of like the sugar for what sugar is and salt for what salt is. The trans sugar, trans salt is a little confusing to me because really, when it comes to cooking, they're really not that interchangeable. I mean, I suppose if you really like a salty chocolate cake and a sweet chicken noodle soup, I suppose it's okay, but I kind of like the old stuff. Anyway, just me, I guess. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. By all means, please post the comments in the comment section. You can also follow me on Rumble on my Locals account, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.